Think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
There's something both electrifying and perplexing about the collision course between Caroline Levitt, a working mother turned White House press secretary, and the opinionated hosts of The View. These daytime veterans pride themselves on elevating women's voices. But when Levitt took center stage, they seemed to forget every slogan about women supporting other women. Overnight, she went from rising star to target on sight, catching the kind of heat usually reserved for politicians twice her age and decades longer in the public eye.
This is why, of course, she's on The View and not working for the most powerful man in the world, because Caroline would wipe the floor with you bitter banshees any day.
This. And you know, you can't refute anything with him because he just, when I say him, I mean...
He rambles.
Trump.
Yeah.
He tends to just...
But can I mention one thing?
But what exactly triggered this firestorm? How did a new mom juggling late-night feedings and high-stakes press briefings send a panel of longtime media personalities into full-on meltdown mode? And more importantly, why couldn't they make a single argument stick? By the time we're done, you'll see how these attacks say more about Levitt's unexpected strength than any perceived weakness. Strap in, because this story is far from a lighthearted daytime squabble. It all began the moment Caroline Levitt stepped up to the podium as press secretary. You'd think the ladies of The View might open with, "Wow, a new mother balancing a White House job. Tell us more." Instead, they launched a bizarre line of questioning. Why isn't she staying home with her child? They collectively clutched their pearls, suddenly alarmed that Levitt chose to work. This was the same group that, for years, championed the mantra, "Women can have it all." Yet they seemed awfully eager to impose an old-school standard on Levitt, one that they'd usually call archaic. It felt like a time warp. Had The View reversed its support for working moms overnight? Levitt, to her credit, simply fired back. With a calm statement on free choice, she reminded them that countless mothers work full-time, and for many, it's not just about personal ambition, it's about contributing to a better future for their kids.
This chaos of 24/7 work is a temporary matter, and that's what at least I tell myself to get through these very long and hard days. But I would reject that you can't be a good mom and be good at your job. I think you can do both. It certainly it's not for everybody, and it takes a lot of work and will and faith and prayer, and it's hard, but it can be done.
Why is the media so against cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the government? I don't get it.
I just want to ask a question.
We won't be deterred. We will not be deterred from...
Still, the studio bristled. Comment after comment came in suggesting she was a bad mom or that a baby so young shouldn't be left behind. Beyond the obvious contradiction, aren't these the folks who once told stay-at-home moms how they were limiting themselves? The real story was how swiftly they pivoted to personal attacks when the standard political jabs fell flat. Levitt, for her part, delivered a quiet show of grace, calmly stating she respected women on both sides. A quick hush fell over the set, but not for long. It's not unusual for talk shows to stir up drama, but The View took it to a new level when they entertained one of the wildest conspiracy theories in modern media. The notion that Elon Musk, yes, the visionary behind SpaceX and Tesla, had some secret plot to push Donald Trump down a flight of stairs. You'd think such a claim might be too outlandish, even for comedic effect. Yet they floated it, half joking, half serious, as though it were legitimate political commentary. Caroline Levitt swiftly dismantled it by calling it what it was: a desperate attempt to smear her, Trump, and even Musk, all in one cartoonish swoop. This wasn't about healthy skepticism or real investigative work. It was about hurling the most absurd narrative at the screen to see if it would stick. Levitt's response? A straightforward denial that left them floundering for new fodder. The conspiracies continued online, with supporters of The View accusing Levitt of covering up some grand scheme. But the more they pushed these bizarre theories, the more they revealed their own shaky foundation. Instead of challenging her arguments on policy or performance, they launched into far-fetched speculation. Each new statement read like a low-budget tabloid headline: secret plots, billionaire conspiracies. Levitt, meanwhile, stood firm. inviting anyone with actual evidence to step forward. No one did. The entire fiasco provided a masterclass in how quickly mainstream discourse can devolve into comedic absurdity when the facts aren't on your side. Matters escalated when Whoopi Goldberg apparently spat on camera after mentioning Trump's name, though in the swirl of the moment, some viewers thought it was just an exasperated gesture. Either way, it came off as a childish retort to a grown-up. Conversation. Levitt supporters pounced on the clip, reposting it with captions like, "This is what they resort to? A Whoopi meltdown moment." It would be amusing if it weren't so telling. The meltdown signaled how powerless Goldberg felt in that moment. Faced with Levitt's calm, confident demeanor, she and the others resorted to playground theatrics instead of debunking Caroline's statements or showing real counter-evidence. They fixated on petty insults and dramatic flourishes that might have worked back in the day when they had the advantage of a captive daytime audience. But times have changed. Now these clips circulate widely on social media where viewers can immediately dissect, fact-check, or poke fun at them. As a result, the View's meltdown only amplified Levitt's credibility. She didn't spit it, she didn't shout, she didn't even roll her eyes. She merely restated her position, ignoring the drama. Watching them unravel became the story of the week. Exactly the kind of high-velocity spectacle that leads to viral internet moments, but not the kind that's flattering for The View. While the confrontation with The View grabbed headlines, it was Levitt's subsequent interaction with a journalist in the press room that truly exposed the media's two-faced nature. She mentioned the staggering sums of government fraud uncovered over recent years, a jaw-dropping figure in the billions, and asked why so few reporters were zeroing in on the problem. Instead of seizing the lead, the journalist took issue with Levitt's timeline, quibbling over exact dates and placing blame elsewhere. Off-screen, Levitt revealed these same journalists would sneak into her office to admit, "We actually appreciate your transparency," moments after grilling her in public as if she were a villain. It's a pattern we've seen again and again. Public condemnation followed by private admiration. For a press that often touts itself as holding truth to power, the real truth was that they recognized Levitt's competence but couldn't afford to say so openly. Levitt's best move? She didn't hide it. By letting the world know that these same outlets privately compliment her, she showed how their on-camera performances might be more about pleasing certain political circles than about seeking real answers. The contrast between their public hostility and private praise painted a damning portrait of the media's performative side. Caroline, in contrast, seemed genuinely unconcerned with playing to any audience. She simply wanted to expose fraud and hold everyone accountable. That, ironically, made her an even bigger threat to the performative press machine. What The View's hosts either forgot or chose to ignore is that Levitt is no political lightweight. She didn't just waltz into the White House on a whim. She got her start working for President Trump's communication team, then took a huge leap by running for Congress. Sure, she ultimately lost to an incumbent Democrat, but her campaign was anything but a sideshow. She won her primary by defeating well-established names, shocking pundits who assumed she didn't stand a chance. Through that grueling process, she honed a skill set you can't buy: the ability to handle relentless attacks, engage skeptics, speak candidly under pressure, and pivot gracefully when the topic changes in a split second. If that's not enough to silence critics, consider her day-to-day approach. She doesn't hide behind a binder the size of a phone book. She's known for speaking directly from memory, from experience, and from the heart. Not every politician can pull that off, especially not under Klieg lights and a throng of hostile questioners. In a world where so many officials seem over-rehearsed, Levitt's spontaneity stands out. It's not the result of laziness or lack of preparation. It's the culmination of lived experience, campaign trials, and countless hours studying policies. She's not just reading bullet points off a page, she's living them. Which explains why her clapbacks are so precise and stinging. They're not pre-scripted, they're genuine reflections of what she truly believes. In the fallout of these heated exchanges, Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg both seem to zero in on Levitt's looks. They sniped that maybe Trump hired her for her so-called perfect 10 appearance. The subtext was obvious. They were trying to delegitimize her accomplishments by reducing her to a pretty face. It was the kind of patronizing barb you might expect from a hostile media figure in the 1960s, not two hosts who champion themselves as progressive thinkers. For anyone watching, though, the real message was more revealing. They've got nothing else. If they could tear apart her policy stances, they would. If they had evidence that she was incompetent, they'd bring it. Instead, they fell back on a cheap jab about looks, the universal last resort of someone who's already lost the argument. While Behar and Goldberg patted themselves on the back for speaking truth to power, the internet collectively rolled its eyes. On the surface, it looked like petty snark, but dig deeper and you see a streak of envy. Levitt is young, talented, and already in one of the most visible political roles in the country. She rose quickly and decisively, something that can drive longtime media personalities a bit mad, especially if they've spent years building their brand. No one wants to publicly confess envy, so they mask it with condescension. But the audience can sense the difference. Instead of undermining Levitt, they inadvertently boosted her profile, driving more people to ask, who is this Caroline Levitt everyone's so threatened by? The real question is why Levitt's authenticity is such a threat. Part of it is the current media landscape. We're used to pre-packaged messages, repetitive buzzwords, and pivot after pivot to avoid tough questions. Along comes Levitt speaking, frankly, about massive fraud, calling out host bias, and championing the choices women make, whether to be stay-at-home moms or career-driven go-getters. This level of candor breaks the script for shows like The View, which rely on predictable debate patterns. It's not that they can't handle an opposing viewpoint, it's that Levitt doesn't fit their stereotype of the other side. She doesn't come off as robotic or unapproachable. She doesn't slip into a purely partisan talking point either. She's a mom who sees hypocrisy around her and calls it out, while also backing up her words with personal sacrifice and real-world experience. It's disarming for those who rely on painting every Trump-linked figure as a cartoon villain. So they up the ante, ramping up drama and conspiracies, hoping to get a big gotcha moment. Yet each time, Levitt doesn't just dodge the bullet, she fires back with something concrete, like tangible figures about government fraud or detailed accounts of her campaign experiences. Suddenly, the meltdown on the other side looks less like a triumphant stand and more like a disoriented scramble. In the end, the saga of Caroline Levitt versus The View reveals a broader cultural and political truth. When someone arrives on the scene with genuine earned confidence and the receipts to back it up, the usual tactics, shaming, conspiracy mongering, mocking appearances, fall flat. Levitt has shown she can hold her own against talk show veterans, mainstream journalists, and partisan snipers alike. Every time they try to corner her, she calmly steps out of the trap and shines a spotlight on their double standards. For audiences tuning in, it's a lesson in how quickly the scripted narratives unravel when a fresh voice refuses to play by the old rules. It challenges viewers to reconsider where they get their information and which experts they trust. After all, if major personalities are stooping to cheap insults and far-fetched plot lines, maybe the real story is that they've got nothing of substance to say. Will Caroline Levitt's approach to press briefings reshape public discourse? It's too early to predict, but the early signs point to a press secretary who's unwilling to cower before media bullies or talk show theatrics. And if the meltdown we've witnessed so far is any indication, Levitt's rise is only going to continue. This clash might be comedic gold for some, but it also serves as a telling milestone in our culture war, a moment when reality TV antics collided with a reality-based communicator and the communicator won. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into one of the most talked about showdowns in modern media. If this story got you thinking, stick around. There's plenty more to uncover in the ongoing battle for authentic discourse. After all, if one new mom can shake up the entire daytime talk universe, who knows what's coming next?